And welcome back, one and all. Welcome back to the next episode of the Book Club. It's Season 2. We are, of course, continuing with The Big Sleep. I'm TrevimusPrime, and I am joined by...
Zerfall.
No interesting introduction. I will come up with one next week, I promise. Okay, so now we have properly delved into The Big Sleep properly. We have our introduction, we have our characters. So, chapters 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8?
That sounds about right.
So we're now into the meat and the main part of the story. And Marlowe is tracking Geiger.
He's starting his investigation. He's gone to his storefront.
I mean, this actually, in my notes, there's something which I didn't pick up on. Now, in the end of chapter 3, he does go to a library to do some research.
Yes.
That now makes perfect sense, because he goes to Geiger's bookshop and asks...
This is good, because as you read the chapter, it makes more and more sense what he's doing, especially if you're not a book person, or a famous first editions book person.
See, I didn't realise that until I actually went back, because I had to reread this stuff. And I went, oh god, then that's why he was researching. But I'd like to make an interesting point before we get into this. Marlowe portrays two types of women up until this point. One, the strong independent type. The two, airhead sexualized type. The girl in this chapter falls into criteria 2.
Yes.
And I don't think this is going to be the first time we get those two people. There's no in between. You're either highly sexed and an idiot, or you're a strong independent woman. That's just my feelings at the moment, but I actually wouldn't be surprised if that turns out to be correct.
And the independentness of the independent woman is actually, it's not the same sort of independentness you might think of as today's strong independent woman.
It's a very shallow independent. It's the, I don't need a man, oh wait, I need a man.
Yeah.
But that's historic and like a sign of the times, really, isn't it? Equality wasn't quite there. So...
He's in the bookstore, and he's casing the joint, and this is another time when he really gets into detail about the things that are going on around him.
So, obviously, he enters this bookstore, it's Geiger's bookstore. Now, he decides to test the female clerk who's on duty. Now, I've already said, that she's an absolute airhead. So he starts talking about all these first editions that sound plausible.
And I think that something that's really great is that he puts his voice on high.
Yeah.
And let a bird twitter in it. He gets all nerdy.
1940s nerdy, as nerdy as you can get.
Yeah,
but the thing is, he just does this to test, and we don't really find this out till later why he's doing it.
I mean, if you were into first editions of books, I'm sure it would check out what he's saying or things that aren't real. But this woman does not pass the test. She's all like, "Oh, I don't know much about the books."
No, and he's literally only doing it just to sort of figure out some things. I think it's mostly because now, do we talk about what we find out in the other chapters now?
I think that this is the sort of book where you kind of have to reference back and forth rather than just trying to do it all chronologically.
What we find out is this bookshop isn't quite what it seems. It's more the front for another operation.
Yes. Although it's still selling books.
Well, yes, a certain type of book. But, so basically, he's done this test to basically rattle her to, like, okay, so this is a proper bookshop. Although if I went into a bookshop now, I doubt they'd know half of what bloody... I go into bloody anything. They won't know the kind of information he's asking.
No, although I've actually had some pretty good experiences with big chain bookstores recently where I've gone in and said, I like these books. Do you have some suggestions? And the guy actually had some suggestions. That being said, the guy was probably about in his 50s, and he probably used to run a bookstore somewhere and then got edged out of business and went and worked for one of these big box stores.
Ladies and gentlemen, Canada, the country where they still read. What a wonderful place you live. So,
So yeah, he tricks her into thinking that he's really interested in these books anyways, because she doesn't know any better. So he's like, oh, I'll just wait, because she says her boss isn't there.
Yeah, just sort of wait for Geiger. I actually quite like the fact he just sits in this leather armchair and just starts smoking again.
Yep.
It's like, dear God, man. So basically, eventually Geiger appears, and he tracks him.
Is that actually Geiger, or is it...
Oh no, that's Geiger.
I thought it was just some guy that was buying something out of the
Wait,
back.
okay, let me. I'll edit this bit out. From what I understood, when he goes into the other bookshop and starts questioning the actual intelligent woman,
Yeah.
she then gives a description of Geiger.
Does it match this guy's? Where's this guy's description?
You know what? I might be wrong. I always assumed it was. And this guy was Geiger was on his way to deliver a book.
No, I think this guy is a guy that just came in and bought a book. Because Geiger shows up in the thing, and he's what is he? He's a tall bird is one way he's described.
Yeah, actually. What do we think then? Oh, no, you are right. Because in chapter 6, a man meeting the description of Geiger actually enters.
Yeah.
Now, it would have clearly said the guy he was following earlier that he now knows as Geiger enters.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's redo that.
And he would have not missed the glass eye in the first time he...
No, but hang on. When he was following him,
Yep.
he was able to get by him, and I assume that was because he had a glass eye. I'm sure there's a bit where he walks out into the alley and he completely misses Marlowe. And I thought that was because he had a glass eye.
Oh, maybe.
Oh, dear.
I thought it seemed like a thinner... I pictured him as a thinner guy, though. Let's see where I can...
I imagine him as this fat man with a glass eye. So...
See, that's how I picture... Geiger.
Oh, you on about the guy that... Yeah, you on about the guy
The
that's
first
gone.
guy I thought was a... See, because he takes something out of his wallet and shows it to the blonde, and then she presses a button on the desk, and then the tall bird went to the door in the paneled partition and opened it barely enough to slip through. So to me, it seems like the guy comes and he's like, here's my it's okay for me to be here thing. Where if it was Geiger, you'd think that he would just walk in and go and unlock the door himself, sort of thing.
Yeah, okay. Do you think what we just discussed is actually in enough coherent form we can put that in? Because I thought that was actually quite an interesting bit.
No, I think it's worth noting.
Yeah, I have no idea how I bloody missed that, but no, I guess you are right. Okay, then. So, as established, it's not Geiger that he's... Well, see, I'm still in two.
We're not 100% sure, but it's either Geiger going to make a delivery, or it's a someone that's come to pick something up. And then,
a purveyor of the fine arts.
Yes.
Tasteful nudes. Tasteful.
Do you know what? By today's standards, they're probably really tasteful.
Oh, tasteful. So, anyway.
He was tracking this guy, and he manages to get him cornered, kind of, and spooks him enough that he leaves the package behind and just takes off.
Now, the thing is, if this is Geiger, he's dumping the package to be picked up by someone else, or... The thing is, if it's one of the purveyors of smut, why does he dump it unless he thinks, oh god, that's a cop?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's being trailed, and the guy obviously is the guy from the bookstore that saw him come and pick something up, and I think he might be like, this obviously isn't something that's smiled upon during this era, and may, in fact, even, I don't know if it was quite legal or not.
Well, I think pornography was illegal.
So he might have been like, I got to get rid of this and get out of here before I get caught with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm under the impression of. Because I think if it was Geiger, I don't think he would leave the package where he knew someone was following him and was going to just take it.
Yeah, but then if we go to what I said earlier, I think that he didn't realise Marlowe was following him anymore because he had the glass eye thing. So he goes, oh, everything's gone, and he just ditches the package in a hedge. You know what? We will know when we come round to the final episode of this and we see the movie. It depends which movie we pick. Do we pick the Jimmy Stewart version or do we pick the Humphrey Bogart version?
Well, I know Humphrey Bogart better than Jimmy Stewart, so...
Oh, come on. Jimmy Stewart is awesome. But anyway, so what I quite like is the fact that he doesn't open the package straight away. He actually... Now, let me get this straight. He tries to, firstly, ring Geiger's home phone. Now, I was trying to figure out if this was him trying to figure out if that the guy he just trailed was indeed Geiger. And the fact that Geiger doesn't pick up and there's no answer at the house maybe corroborates that, or it's corroborating the fact that Geiger, as we find out, is indeed in the shop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then he goes to the other bookstore and does the same test of, oh, look, I want these first editions. And the woman basically goes, these don't exist.
Yeah, she takes out her book and she's all professional about it. I don't have that. It doesn't make any sense. No one would. It doesn't exist. And then he lets her know that the girl in Geiger's store didn't know that. She's like, "Oh, you interest me," rather vaguely.
Yeah, does it seem to you like every single woman tries to come on to Philip Marlowe at some point?
Yeah, maybe being a Gary Stu wasn't quite a trope yet.
A private dick, as he keeps referring to himself constantly.
Yes.
Is that actually a... Oh no, that's not a quote. That's a shame. I thought it was. I'm pretty sure he does refer to himself as a private dick, and then she does go, "You interest me."
No, it's the opposite. She says she's interested, and then he's like, "I'm a private dick on a case."
It's like, yeah, leave me alone. But it's... And basically, he manages to get her to give him a full description of what Geiger looks like. And this is, if we're assuming that guy wasn't Geiger, and to be honest, the more that I think about it, it obviously wasn't. That's the point he goes, right, he's got to still be at the shop then.
Yeah, and he goes and waits for him to show up. And then he ends up showing up in a car.
Yeah, we haven't actually said the fact that it's at this point where he does actually open the package and realises it's smut.
Oh, it's smutty smut. It's awesome because he describes it as an indescribable filth. Oh, it's real bad. Nude women and words that talk about stuff that going into things.
Delightful. But that does bring us quite nicely, I think, onto chapter 6, doesn't it?
It does. The one last thing I want to point out, though, too, is that the book is stamped in the front with in and out dates, a rent book, a lending library of elaborate smut. And the grossest thing about that is who's going to want to read smut that's from a lending library? This is why the internet might be the best invention ever.
Look, there has... I hadn't actually thought of it like that. Well done. That's quite... Oh, only you would actually go that much into it and go, wait a minute, a library of filth? No!
It's going to be extra filthy, if you know what I mean.
Oh, indeed, he would be.
No wonder why he drinks so much.
Again, I think we need to play a game of the moment that we actually read Marlowe eating something, we need to stop and actually consider this quite heavily, because it has to be symbolic. He wouldn't just put it in there. I mean, it's lucky we're not doing a drinking game where every time he drinks or smokes, we take a shot, because bloody hell.
Yeah, it's funny, too, because he gives this girl a hard time about having a liquid lunch, and then he just constantly goes and buys bottles of whiskey and just drinks them right out of there.
Dear. I wonder if it's sort of like, again, when it's trying to... Your average bloke was this sort of person at that time, but I want to say maybe he's an amplified stereotype of this average man.
I would think so, because there's an awful lot of drinking and driving going on.
Oh, I wouldn't. There's a bit.
Although
later.
I know that back in the day, people didn't consider it so bad because there were fewer cars, and when someone your car only went so fast, so there was far fewer super tragic accidents.
It's like you're in a high-speed crash, you've done 20 miles an hour. But there is, I mean, now you say that, there is a bit later on where he is actually sitting in the car waiting, for whatever to happen. And he's just got a hit flask.
Yeah, and he finishes like half of it off, and then he's like, oh, something's going on, I'm going to drive now.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, they didn't have power steering as well, so actually... I don't want to think about it, because I know what cars looked like back then, and usually these bloody long things that don't corner very well.
Yeah.
So anyway, chapter 6. Marlowe continues to watch Geiger's store until a man meeting the description of Geiger enters. When he leaves, Marlowe follows the man's car all the way to his house. As Marlowe watches the house, he sees a white car pull up and park in the driveway. He finds out the car is Carmen Sternwood's.
Yep.
Now, considering this guy is blackmailing her father, what the hell is she doing there?
And it sort of makes sense why her name is the thing on the slip now.
Yeah, it does. The point I've read, and you've read that point as well. I still don't quite get why she's there.
Well, let's get to that point, I guess.
Yeah,
so
okay.
There's a small flash comes from the house, and a little there's a small scream, but there's no fear in the scream.
No.
It sounds of half pleasurable shock and an accent of drunkenness and an overtone of pure idiocity. So it's obviously her doing the screaming there, considering what we know of her. But then shortly after that, he hears some more sounds that are obviously gunshots.
Yeah.
And he goes flying towards the house, breaks his way in, and when he gets in there, he's got a naked Carmen in a chair and a dead Geiger on the floor.
Yeah, I quite like the quote of this. It's, neither of the two people in the room paid any attention to the way I came in, although one of them was dead. And it's just how chapter 6 ends. It's like, well bloody done. I quite like, again, we talked about this last time, but I quite like the fact that chapters are very concise and they just get over the point they want to make. And again, like we said last time, each chapter does feel like a bit like a different scene.
Yeah.
And the thing
is too is that as much as the chapters are concise, he doesn't necessarily skip over details. There's still a lot of stuff that goes on. Like chapter 7 starts with talking about the room and how big it is and all the Chinese embroidery on things and Japanese prints, ingrained wood frames and the bookshelves and everything. It goes into quite a bit of detail about the room, enough that you can flesh it out in your mind. And then it stops talking about that stuff and gets down to what's going on.
He's very good at setting the scene every time the scene changes. But again, that lends itself to and explains why the hell this was easily made into a movie. And when the movie was made, to the best of my knowledge, it's literally, well, it's literal. It's a literal translation of the book because he gave enough description.
Yeah. So
chapter 7, we have a dead Geiger. We have a very off her face Carmen Sternwood.
Yes, there's the scent of ether and alcohol all over her, and she's that may be why she keeps coming back. She just wants to get high, and he's providing it.
Now you say that. It's just unfortunately she's naked and there's a camera set up.
Yeah, so she gets to get high, and then he gets to take pictures of her.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure she knows about that, let's face it. Actually, no, she probably does, though.
She may not realize the extent of what those pictures may be used for, or the fact that her father is going to be blackmailed with them. I don't know that the intent is put forth in the blackmailing note, but
no,
it definitely feels like he's got these pictures of his daughter, and if he doesn't pay up the first time, he's probably going to just send one of those along and be like, these are going to be out in the public if you don't.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Now, the thing that actually is slightly weird here is, of course, he's been shot.
Yes.
So Geiger is dead. So Marlowe begins to piece together the events of the night. Okay, so he sees the camera, goes, okay, that's the flash. The scream, well, that was probably when someone burst in and shot Geiger. But the thing that gets him is there is no plate in the camera.
Yeah, so somebody's taken the negative.
Yeah, so the story basically thickens, and it goes from the problems with Geiger to now the case of the missing picture, really, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I suppose we should point out the reason why you don't think she's so aware of the photos is because when she's in that state, the camera is also built into a totem pole, which sounds... and there's a eagle on it, and one of the eyes is the camera lens, which sounds really, really sneaky until there's also a blackened flash bulb clipped to the side of the totem pole. And when you picture a camera from the 1930s, you're like, yeah, he's in this dark, like not best lit room and everything. There's no way someone's going to come in and before they're high not go, hey, there's a camera in that totem pole.
She must have been completely out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically Marlowe goes, okay, and he starts searching the house to see what he can find before... No, hang on. Let me back up. Does he... No, I was right. So he doesn't decide to touch much, but he decides to go looking in the house to what else he can find, and he does find a blue leather book with writing in it, which is some sort of code.
Yep.
And I think he decides that that's a list of maybe customers or people he's blackmailing.
Yeah, so he Yeah, he thinks it's a ledger of his illicit activities.
And then he manages to somehow dress Carmen and get her home.
Yes, and this is really good because, it made me laugh because he goes and looks at her clothing.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, there's a pretty good line here. Let's see if I can find. Yes, okay, so at first it says, he goes over and paws through the girl's clothes. There was a pale green rough wool dress of the pull-on type with half sleeves. I thought I might be able to handle it. And when I first read that, I thought he meant like, I might be able to pull this off as a disguise. Because then the next line is, I decided to pass up on her underclothes. Not from a feeling of delicacy, but because I couldn't see myself putting her pants on and snapping her brassiere. But when I read that too, I was still in the same mindset. I'm like, he's really getting into this. But no, he's trying to be at least a little chivalrous. And after ogling her up when he first got in, he's gonna dress her. He's gonna dress her up a little bit and then slap her around to wake her up. Because it's like, I slapped her face. She blinked, stopped chuckling. I slapped her again. Come on, I said, let's be nice and get dressed. She looked at me, and what'd she say? The
most descriptive of words.
And then the next line is just, I slapped her around a little more. She didn't mind the slaps.
Again, it is still very much that, like, the stereotypes of the time are completely amplified. Or at least I hope they bloody are, and this isn't actually how things were.
Things might have been worse than you thought.
Yeah, I know.
But
okay.
But yeah, but it does go to show how high she is, that it's not really snapping her out of her stupor. I suppose he thinks that part of her stupor may have been having just witnessed someone being shot 3 times.
Well, I mean, she doesn't seem to notice, though, does she? That he's even been shot. She's sitting there giggling.
So he, at this point, I think he gets her cleaned up a little bit. And that's when he notices there's no plate holder in the camera, and he ends up deciding to take her home before he does any more research in the house.
Yeah, the next chapter I quite like, because he does actually get her home, and where's the line? Can I find it? No, I don't think it's not on my notes. But essentially, he gets her home, like palms her off onto the butler and the Mrs. Reagan sort of housekeeper, and it's sort of very a hush hush, do not ask, about what the hell happened, and they're just like, okay, as if it's not the first time that she's tipped up.
Mathilda will do right by her, and then the butler says, we all try to do right by her, and Marlowe says, I guess you've had practice.
Yeah, she's your typical spoiled daughter who daddy knows what she is, but and just gets on with it.
And it's nice too because the butler seems to warm up to him a bit at this point, and tries to offer him a cab, but he turns it down because cabbies remember who they drive and decides to just walk in the rain all the way back to where his car is.
I mean, at the end of the day, he's just left a murder scene. And there's nothing really sort of said about it. It's like, oh, okay, guy's been murdered. Better get her home. And it's probably the worst mistake Philip Marlowe could have made up until this point, because when he gets back, the body's gone.
Yep. Everything's been... I think things have been cleaned up a bit, too.
They have. I mean, especially considering this guy is apparently quite big. And he looks around the house and he can't see... Can he find drag marks? I think
he finds drag marks sort of in because the rug was one of those really thick rugs, so he can kind of see 2 lines going along the pile of the rug, that he assumes is the 2 feet that were being dragged. 2 parallel grooves pointing that way.
I mean, it's essentially, or the way it came across to me, whoever killed him didn't necessarily... Well, one or 2 things. Didn't expect Carmen Sturwood to be there and bolted, and... secondly, wanted it to now look like that he's just gone missing. I mean, he could have actually tried to pin it on Marlowe.
Yeah.
But whoever this person is didn't.
No. And Marlowe's the one that kind of tells us that this is what his conclusions are. And he doesn't think that it was the killer that did this, because he saw the girl and took off. So he's probably off on his way to distant places so that he can be safe from the law if she was with it enough to see who it was.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like the fact that it's like you said about Cabby's Remember. He actually walks back from the General's house all the way back to Geiger's place. Now, I think it says it doesn't take too long, but there's enough of the window there for someone to get in and do whatever they've got to. So,
and he even turns down taking a cab from a gas station that's... Because at first I thought he wasn't taking the cab because he didn't want to be associated with the family and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But then he gets all the way to a gas station and he goes, "Oh, should I call a cab from here then instead?" And he goes, "No, I got more reasons not to call a cab."
There's two things I would like to bring up now. Do we claim questionable plot hole? Or do we claim that the fact that Marlowe in no way, shape, and hell was to assume the body would go missing?
Yeah, I don't think he thought it would go missing because I think earlier on he mentions that there's no sirens being heard or anything like that, and if the cops were on their way, they would have already. If the murder had been reported, the cops would have already been on the way by the time he was taken off.
Yeah,
because
sure.
he does spend quite a bit of time in the house, right? Because he does a bit of searching, and then when he comes back, he does even more.
Yeah, so we just assumed it was there's no issue there.
Mm-hmm.
He can just go back. I mean, the thing is, that's pretty much the rest of what happens in the chapter.
Yeah, he does a little bit of more looking through the house. When he first looked through the house, he found a woman's bedroom, and he looks through a little more and gets behind a locked door, and it's a men's room instead.
Mm-hmm.
And he does a much better job of wiping down his own fingerprints and whatnot so that nobody's going to be blaming him for this.
No, sure. I mean, the only other thing he really does in this chapter is, again, he goes through the book and he comes up with there's at least 400 possible customers. I'd say probably customers more than blackmail people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really it. Philip Marlowe drinks himself to sleep.
Yes. Oh, and he has a dream.
Yeah, go on. I haven't got the quote. I'm assuming you have.
He has a dream about a man in a bloody Chinese coat who chased a naked girl with long jade earrings while I ran after them and tried to take a photograph with an empty camera.
Yeah. I really like the way Raymond Chandler's done this.
And I think you can really pick up on the sort of pulp magazine beginnings that Chandler had when you read this book, because it's it seems like the sets of chapters are very compartmentalized.
Yeah, sure.
So that when he goes to sleep, that would be the perfect ending for if it was in a magazine and you wanted them to buy the magazine next month and read that next bit, right?
No, I completely agree. I mean, how many chapters did we say were in the book?
There's something like 24, maybe?
I was about to say then.
Oh, there's like 30.
Is there?
32? I think it's a multiple of 4, though. Yeah,
32. I was gonna say 3-act structure, possibly. So this could be the end of Act 1.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? With the big closing of him, all this has happened. We've had the introduction. We've had a snippet of what's going to happen, and then big close. The curtain comes down, and he goes to sleep.
Yes. And we've already had one person take the actual big sleep in this book.
Oh! It's about time we actually talked about what the title was about. We didn't fucking do it last time. Which was surprising, actually, when I went through to edit it and went, hang on. Neuromancer, oh shit, I mentioned Neuromancer. I didn't mention Neuromancer, I'm cutting that out. Last time we did this book club thing, we didn't actually even discuss what the actual title was about till bloody way in.
Well, we didn't know. Well, no, you probably knew, but I didn't.
I didn't bloody know. I'd forgotten what half the book was about.
No.
Which is actually, again, quite nice. We're reading this completely blind.
Yep. But so the big sleep is definitely murders.
Oh, it's definitely. Do you think we're actually going to get much murder?
I feel like there's probably going to be more. I think that there's a lot of, well, not necessarily murder, but probably more death. I think that in this sort of genre, the noir-esque thing, there tends to be, there's not a lot of, I don't know, fights with the villains or whatever that doesn't come out with at least some people being shot or something.
I mean, we've still got to deal with the fact that Reagan is missing.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't got a massive selection of characters right now. I mean, I know in Chapter 9 a load more are introduced. Or, well, one. one more, and she's introduced. Oh, well, actually, no, technically 2, if you count the other thing, which I can't really talk about because we're not discussing that chapter. But what do we... I mean... Okay. Chapter 9, which we're not going to discuss, as me and Zerfall discussed before we started recording, is very much an interim chapter. It stands on its own.
Plus, I haven't read it yet.
Oh, plus you haven't read it yet. I don't really know how many chapters we're going to do next time, because, of course, we haven't read it. So it could be chapters 9, 10, 11, 12, or it could be 9 to 15. I mean, I don't know.
I think that if we read through and he decides to go to sleep again at some point between the next 4 chapters, that's probably a pretty good. It's like a day 1.
I mean, we are actually pretty much talking that this series might only be 6 videos.
Yeah,
and I think the other season of the book club was about 8.
So that's not too far off.
No, and we actually talked for about 45 minutes in the last season. I don't think we're going to be doing that this time.
No, I think it's going to be broken up into smaller bits, and I think that's part of what the... I think it's part of the whole it came from Pulp Magazine thing where things were meant to happen pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we'd be really buggered if we read a book without chapters. Oh my god. But anyway, so that has been chapters 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 of The Big Sleep. I'm hoping everyone that's listening to this is enjoying this new season, the different styles that we're doing, and that we are continuing to improve every time we do this. So, I've been TrevimusPrime.
I've been Zerfall.
And we'll catch you next time.
Bye.